Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. It's really a pleasure today, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I was a little bit intimidated by my guest, who I have a whole lot of respect for, but also I know is one of the seniors of this community, who knows the community so well. So he's going to call me on my nonsense or anything I say that's not true, but that's exactly why we love him. I'm here today with John Davies, who's the owner and founder of Davies Public Affairs and Blaze PR. John, how are you?
I'm great. What a fun way to start a day.
Thanks, John. You and I go back almost 20 years, and when I was a young reporter at the News Press and writing a whole bunch of stories that you were paying attention to and giving some feedback when necessary. And I think over the years, I've wore you down a little bit. I think, you've developed a little bit of a better perception of me and my skills, and I've gotten to better understand you as well. And that's part of life, right? Getting to know each other better and learning each other's strengths, weaknesses, and ultimately supporting each other. So I really appreciate you, John, taking the time. You are the kingpin of public affairs, not only in Santa Barbara County, but really nationally. You have this national reputation as being one of the top powerhouses of public affairs. And I'll let you talk about that in a second. But just, I want to talk to you a little bit today about what you do, but in the context of where we originally met, which was 20 years ago, talking about Santa Barbara County politics. And Santa Barbara County politics is, we're run by Democrats, and Democrats hold most of the seats here. But we're going to talk today about, I want to ask you about conservatives and conservative power, and why do we sort of see similar things happening locally year after year, even if nationally you have, a whole era of conservatives, running things nationally. Why locally we don't really see that, but are we starting to see a little bit of a switch? So I want to just kind of open up to you, John, and sort of, talk to me a little bit about Davies Public Affairs and Blaze PR and what you do, and let's dive into politics in Santa Barbara County.
Great. I look forward to diving in. I know 20 years ago, we did bump in when actually things were sort of interesting and competitive here. And, some way along the line today, we can talk about why I don't do candidate campaigns anymore. But that happened about 25 years ago. Yeah. But, and the deal is a mentor and really good friend years ago said, sometimes with reporters and others, you got to kick a little dirt under their shoes, like you do with an umpire in a baseball game. And so, we've learned over time that, when you think things aren't going well, you can't say, yeah, that's fine. That's a great story. You got to push back a little bit. And you probably noticed that once or twice.
I've noticed it once or twice. I've been called into a few executive offices.
I know. Well, I don't call you in. I will have a conversation with it. But I do love watching how you matured, how you've done things. What I see, Josh, that's so cool is you're really a dedicated family man. Your focus is raising your two kids, being a good husband, and that's awesome. You're taking on numerous jobs. You're doing this. This is a great idea. Someone in Santa Barbara needed to do this, and I love that you're doing it. And I see big things for it. And you're writing at Newshawk, writing other places, and also teaching. This is Santa Barbara. You got to sort of figure out a way to make it all happen to stay here, and you've done it. So you should really be proud. A lot of people have not been able to figure out. They're not that industrious. So Davies Public Affairs, we started here, a long time ago. I helped with Jack O'Connell's campaign. I was the local guy, and I had a small design advertising firm that I sold to my partner right after Jack's campaign, and I opened the doors. And it was called something else, but it was called Davies Communications, and we did projects here. It was, we muddled along. I screwed up a lot, and we grew, brought in really good people, worked with great people, and we started looking outside the region. My deal is, do I really want to have my entire life based on who I know in City Hall and the county office building? And my answer was resoundingly no. I wanted to do public affairs. I wanted to do the communication side. I wanted to do the persuasion side. I didn't want to be a lobbyist. I left that to others. And so that means we had to go look elsewhere. So we did more in the region. We did more in the state. And then we establish a national footprint and do selected projects in selected industries around the nation. We work a lot in energy. We work with solar and wind developers all over the country. Right now, we're doing projects in Florida, Arizona, California, even Indiana, Mississippi. I mean, it's sort of crazy the places we're doing it. We've done projects, Illinois, all over with wind and solar. It's crazy business. And then we work with natural gas utilities around the country. We have about 15 states where we represent the natural gas utility going through issues. And then we work with developers, and we work with developers mostly in California. And in the last decade, a lot in San Diego. We did 4 of the biggest projects in the history of San Diego, which has been great. I love San Diego, so it's been great to go there. And then Blaze PR is a consumer PR firm, totally different format, different people, different field, different game. It's such a relief to be able to go see something totally different. And I have a great team there. I have a great president, and he's a rock star in the industry and is really doing a great job running that. And I get to go in and play and motivate and mentor a bunch of those folks. So that's the companies in a nutshell.
Yeah. That's great. And that you were able to start small, transition, be visionary, and find a clientele for obviously an industry that we're all super dependent on. We all have our opinions on, but every one of us every day has to feel, what it's like to put gas in your car, or, if you don't have a car, you still see, that it's something that is affecting all of us, the cost of energy. We're not going to talk too much about that. That's not my expertise.
Please.
But what I want to talk to you about is, you've represented a lot of clients, and you're still, even though you don't do a lot of stuff locally on campaigns, you're super knowledgeable. And I know that people turn to you, even if it's just sort of, hey, let's have a conversation. Can you be my confidant, my informal advisor, bounce things off of you? So I know you're deeply in the know. I've spent a lot of ink over the years on the Democratic Party in Santa Barbara County. And there's a reason for that. They organize well, or historically have organized well. They have a lot of volunteers. We're tied to the university. There's a lot of activism that goes on. And so there's a lot of stories. Oh, the party endorses this person, endorses that person. And we'll talk more deeper about them in a second. But conservative power in Santa Barbara County is a little bit different than Democrat power. And part of that is party registration. We know there are more Democrats, certainly in the South Coast, in the county. We have more conservatives. The big question I always have is, how do conservatives do a better job of organizing future leaders, future people to run for these seats? Nothing against Mike Stoker, okay? But Mike Stoker is challenging Greg Hart for assembly, and Mike Stoker's been around a long, long time. Is there not somebody else who could have been groomed for a seat like this? What's going on, John, with conservative power in Santa Barbara County?
Well, so we live in a county that's 18 to 20% advantage for Democrats. And when you have that, when you look at the numbers and look at the races, it makes it really hard to run. And it's also, I don't want to get tough on them, but many of the leaders in the Democratic Party are willing to attack a candidate who runs as a Republican. They're willing to cancel them, take them on personally, try to ruin them. So, you look at the effort in the last city council election. We have a very attractive candidate, sharp young man, successful businessman at a young age, very giving man, someone who volunteers at the jail, takes care of others, a good family man, and fight with his ideas, but he was attacked for what he believed in, a faith that he grew up with, that he was a Christian man and he grew up in a Christian family. He was attacked by it. So if you're someone like Barrett Reed, why would you do that? And then you finish and you don't win. He ran a great campaign. He was a very attractive candidate. When you don't win, then you get into the massive post-election attack that Kristen Sneddon went after him. It was awful, for no reason whatsoever. He attacked her policies, which is fair game. he attacked the results of what's going on in the city. Again, fair game. He never took her on personally. He never said anything bad about her. He was kind to her as a person. She just went full out to destroy his life. So why would anyone run? I mean, why would you do that? I mean, if that's what happens, why would you run? And knowing that you're sort of sacrificial.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're talking about Barrett Reed, you know, and he ran. Now, let me just push back a little bit on that. That's why you're here. That's why you're a guest. Everything you said is true, right? Everything you said is true. But you're like, oh, here comes the journalism thing. Yes, the religion thing was very blatant. And I would argue that if it were any other religion than Christianity, you probably would not have seen that, because people would have been afraid to do that. They would have been afraid of getting pushback from people. So that's true. Barrett, however, you know, he is a adaptive reuse sort of developer kind of thing. Were there not things that were legitimate to criticize him about for that campaign from your perspective that, totally went hand in hand with the other stuff? Mm-hmm.
Totally. I mean, yeah, go straight forward at him. He went strong. He had strong beliefs, but that he was sort of as a Christian radical who belonged to a cult.
Yeah.
And yeah, I taught at that group like 7 or 8 times over the years, and you know, pretty far from even a thought of a cult. And that he was a massive developer. I mean, you know, and you know, Barrett Reed takes old buildings and turns them into something beautiful. I mean, we should be cheering that. We got a lot of old buildings that need to be beautiful in our town. And you know, his early business when he was in high school was rehabbing cars, refurbishing cars. And that's basically what he does now with buildings. He refurbishes buildings. I mean, that's not a bad life. He recycles old things and makes them better. And it's still fine. Attack him for some things, but who he is as a man, his faith, and attacking him for it and calling him really horrible names was just out of line. But the worst part was after the election to go after him that hard and that personally. I mean,
when he applied for reappointment to the Planning Commission, and Kristen Sneddon laid him out in the meeting. That's what you're talking about, right?
Really badly. Yeah. I mean, that was part of the cancel culture deal. And so, I mean, so when you look at it, why run?
Yeah. So I think, you know, that goes to sort of the bigger issue is, you know, Barrett Reed, when you talk to him, he's a nice guy. And I think I know Barrett on a certain level, and he's a good guy. He's very nice. That doesn't mean that, you know, you have to embrace everything that comes out of his mouth. Absolutely. He is a good guy. He's a very nice, genuine person. Is that the best seat for him? Why don't the conservatives think about these things deeper and sort of say, you know, Barrett, don't take on Kristen Sneddon. Her name alone, you know, is gold. She's got a lot of positives. It's San Roque. You really can't unseat her. I don't care who you are. Let's look at this other seat where you're going to have more appeal. Are those conversations happening, or are they not? Why not?
There is no one. Yeah. There's no one. You know, the party has a party chair, Bobby, and she works every year to try to fill the R slots every year, and you can see it's very difficult for her. So I mean, that's where we become a Democratic county, a Democratic city. The numbers are so big, hard to get over, and so there really isn't a Republican Party. I mean, the candidates run are good guys. You know, Andy Caldwell, he's a good man. He's a hardworking guy. I mean, you don't want to get in a debate with him, but you know, this goes. You know, and Mike Stoker, you know, he's a pretty accomplished guy. I mean, he's done a lot of things. He's had a lot of appointments, and you know, he's going to go. He don't want to get in an argument with Mike either. You know, he can go. So if you look across the field, there's not a lot of people out there running and doing that. So
is there
everyone I talk to who is thinking about running, and for the last couple of months, I've had coffee with more people running for different offices than I care to remember. It used to be they'd sneak into my office, and one of my favorites was Helene Schneider came in and wanted to talk to me, and she's running, and I met all the candidates. She was the last one, and I said, hold, before you leave, I want to give you a check. I like you.
Yeah.
And we've lost that. we've lost it. I mean, I really like her. I mean, Greg Hart's been a friend for a long time. Doss and I have been friends for a long time. I can call up Doss and ask a question. I can ping him and say, that was a crazy vote and a crazy remark. And he'll ping back, go, yeah, sometimes we can't agree on everything. I go, right. Yeah, we're still friends. We don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We've lost that. So the conservatives and Republicans are like, why get into that game?
Right.
And they become independents.
Yeah, it's become really personal. And before, it's sort of like a chess game, right? Like you kind of appreciate the moves of your opponent. Like, whoa, that was a good one. You're going to come back with this. And at the end of the day, you develop respect for your opponents over time, like a Doss or a Helene, you know. But now there's this tendency, okay, I lost. I'm going to tip the table over. I'm going to show you why you were using the wrong pieces in the first place and you shouldn't have won. And so that's sort of what makes it really, really difficult for a lot of people. You know, the Democrats, they work with UCSB. They have a strong connection, and you get a regular rotation of young liberal activists coming through there. And they're part of the young progressives, the next generation of Democrats. I know there has to be, right? There have to be like Young America's Foundation or, you know, conservative students at UCSB. I see them at Santa Barbara City College. They're not the dominant, but they are there. Is there not a way to sort of, hey, we're going to start tabling out there, or we're going to go to those groups and we're going to start having conversations to get them to be involved? Or is that just not part of the...
It just is not what's happening anymore. There was at one time. I mean, if you think back, you know, we had a Republican member of Congress from here for a long, long time. We had Republican state office holders from here, and they're just not there. So if you think about it, usually it's one of the top office holders that becomes part of the rally and getting people organized and making something happen. Okay. And that just, you know, there's a cult of personality, you know, Gary Hart, Jack O'Connell, that does it. And on the Republican side, you know, we've had some good folks at that level, but they're not that person, like Brooks Firestone.
Yeah, right. You know, you mentioned Doss Williams, you mentioned Helene Schneider.
Yeah.
As
she was an incredible person to talk to and deal with. Yeah. We disagreed. Her blue line thing was like, you know, she did it. I pinged her and said, really? I said, you know, we have to, some of us got to go hard at this. She goes, yeah. So I helped bring together a group with the taxpayers and others and a couple of my clients to sue for property that they were damaging the property rights. My deal was two things. One is, if you do the blue line, it's going to be underwater, then I'm not paying any property tax because the value of my property is zero. Yeah. Or second, that because you're doing this, you're lowering the value of my property. And that's what happened. And we actually get to talk about that every once in a while. Again, I just saw her recently, we laughed at one another about it. And then before that, you know, we had Harriet Miller, and, you know, and I ran a couple campaigns against Harriet and beat her. And then Harriet and I became fast friends. She, in fact, asked me to help put together her retirement party and to MC it. And we became really good friends. I respect the heck out of that woman. I mean, I could not disagree with her more on many issues, but she was a human who was really interesting, hardworking, and man, what a figure in this community. I mean, into her 80s, she's going to paradise after council meetings and sitting there for a couple hours, you know, knocking down some drinks and talking with everyone. I mean, you don't see that much anymore.
Yeah. And that ability to sort of separate, you know, I live my life this way, you live your life this way, but that doesn't mean that we can't get along or that you're not a good person and I can't help you and support you. We don't see much of that anymore. Greg Hart is another.
I will tell you, you just about say it. Gregg and Doss still have that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're congenial people, and you can have an incredible conversation with them, and they do that with a lot of people. And you know, I like the relationship that I can have with someone like that.
Exactly. So let's talk about Greg Hart. He's running for assembly. You know, for years he had wanted to run for higher office. He cut some deals with the party for him to wait, step aside. Now it's his time, right? This is it.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to run. You like Gregg. Gregg's super smart guy. In many ways, Gregg could be like, if things had played out differently, he might have been on the other side. He can argue both politics really well.
Yeah.
He's taken on Mike Stoker. What's your assessment of this assembly race?
Well, it all starts with the numbers.
Yeah.
Politics is numbers. And the 37th Assembly District is 18% advantage for Democrats. And so Mike Stoker runs the best campaign in history. He gets out there, he tells his story, he raises enough money to really shake Gregg and run after him. He's got to move 18%. So he's got to get a big majority of the Republicans. He's got to get 80-90%.
Yeah.
And then he's got to get 30-40% of the Democrats. And that's a pretty tough mountain to climb. When Brooks Firestone ran for state assembly, it was like 12 points, and I did his campaign, and we had 93% of the Republicans going into the race because he's Brooks Firestone.
Yeah. So
we knew we had that. The entire campaign, $1.8 million to be spent, was focused on winning 35% of the Democrats. I mean, think about that. I want to get our goals 35%. let's lose 65-35. And we only walked, we only called, we only mailed, and we only targeted Democrats.
Yeah.
And I mean, today it would be so much easier with digital. You can target in a stronger way. But you think about that, and we got more than 35%. But he held his Republicans. We didn't have to do it. So the strategy was very unique. And that's what Mike needs to do. Number one, he's got to get up to the 85-90% with the Republicans.
Yeah.
And that's hard these days, because when you try to keep your party happy, you gotta push yourself to the edge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what you see in a lot of Democratic races here, because they got to get really to the edge.
Yeah.
And to get 35%, you got to get soft.
Right. Yeah.
You think about it, you got to get hard edge, and then on the other side, to get the Democrats, you have to soften up a little bit, and that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for a tiger to run and raise some hell, and Sacramento loves that there's competitive races all over the state, for both sides, because if Gregg didn't have a race, the Democrats wouldn't have to spend any money here. Gregg would become a fundraising machine for other races. So they want to keep a guy like Gregg busy.
Right. I see. Yeah. And what about Andrew Firestone? Is he the heir apparent? I mean, I'm certain if Andrew Firestone ran for a county office, he'd be very formidable. Are we ever going to see the next generation of Firestone?
Well, definitely Andrew.
Okay.
If there is going to be one. It may jump a generation, maybe some of his kids, but Andrew, I think, has had the bug, as did Brooks. But Brooks didn't run until later in life.
Yeah.
The funny thing about Brooks is I worked with Jack O'Connell in 1982 in his campaign, and that campaign was against Brooks Firestone. And so that's my Democratic credentials back when I was a Democrat. By the way, there's a certain point in life you got to switch. Gosh, we'll talk, okay? Remember what they say. When you're young, and you're a liberal, you got to be a liberal, because if you're not a liberal when you're young, you have no heart. And then as you get older, if you're not a conservative, you have no brains. There's some famous quotes on that, maybe Winston Churchill. But so I became friends with Brooks. Right after that campaign, we won by a massive amount. It was a landslide. We won by about half a vote a precinct. And Brooks reached out to me. And I was also changing my worldview a lot, looking at things and how we deal with people and take care of things. I became a Republican, and then I ran Brooks's campaign after that.
Yeah.
So that was quite the switch. And then again, there's Brooks Firestone. He reached out to the guy working on the other side.
Yeah.
And has a conversation. I mean, now you'd spit at me if you walked down the street. Right? I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the leaders of the Democratic Party, and I'm not going to mention the names. I mean, if I walked in the room, they may walk out.
Yeah. Yeah, it might be tough to get them to say nice things about you in public, but they definitely would respect you privately and fear, uh-oh, John Davies is working with that candidate. That means it's a different level. So there's that. I want to talk to you about some of the other seats. You have the Santa Barbara County Office of Education seat, and Christy Lozano, she got some national attention on Fox News. She did an interview. She's a teacher. She talked about some issues she has with the curriculum in Santa Barbara Unified School District. Is that a competitive seat at all, or is that like Hart Stoker? Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so. I think it's number one, it's nonpartisan, and I think Christie's nonpartisan. Mm-hmm. They both signed the agreement not to raise and spend over $150 something thousand.
Yeah.
So now it comes out who can come up with the right message, because I don't think as an incumbent that she has any name ID. I don't think the incumbent has any name ID. Yeah. Bill Cerrone, held that office, and he was everywhere all the time. I love Bill's radio. I love Bill. He's another guy that I was really close to. I served on his board, but Bill was everywhere. I mean, talk about a crazy deal. He had his own radio shows. He would do with that New York accent, Bronx accent.
Awesome.
Right? Yeah. And then he's in every newspaper with a column.
Right.
I mean, Susan's not done that.
Yeah.
And so I think this could be one of the more interesting races, and it depends who Christy gets to do her campaign. And are we going to get off in Neverland talking about things no one cares about? I mean, and I have a feeling that's possible.
Well, you can't really talk about those national issues here. It doesn't play well, right? You need to.
No, that's not true. It's really interesting, Josh. Polling that I've done over the last few months here on a lot of issues, the Democrats as candidates and as a party are very popular, as we see. The issues are just the opposite. A lot of the issues, and there's frustration with what the state has done, frustration with the lack of water development in the state, frustration with spending, frustration with taxes. I mean, every issue that you talk about, which is a lot of the national trend right now too, are all Republican issues. But look what happened in the recall. I mean, all the issues statewide were totally against Gavin Newsom. But when it came down to it, if you don't elect Gavin, or if you recall Gavin, you're going to get Donald Trump. I mean, that's the great call now is Donald Trump is a boogeyman. And so, but the issues, education, parents' rights with education. I mean, Christy's got a great platform if she does it to go forward with. I mean, you saw what happened in Virginia with Youngkin. I mean, his platform was pretty darn simple. It was a lot to do with parents' rights. Parents are frustrated with what happened, and Santa Barbara being at the top of the poverty list of counties. I mean, we could talk about that how does that happen?
Right.
Like literally, how does that happen? And so we're at the top of the poverty list. We lock down our schools and we do nothing to help the kids. Mm-hmm. So our church, my wife being one of the volunteers, took in as a learning center 30 kids, 40 kids a day to get them. So we got them devices, we got them online, and we helped them do their work. And so we had a bunch of tutors, lots of people, so the kids could have a lot of attention. And they watched the classes and like, oh my gosh, that was horrible. These poor kids were sitting out in front of the Franklin Center with a 5-generation-old iPhone trying to get Wi-Fi, or they stood out in front of restaurants trying to get Wi-Fi to do their homework. I mean, this is second, third graders, kindergartners trying to do it, and their parents are working 2 jobs each, and they have no place to turn. I mean, what happened to us? I mean, why did we just let that happen without fixing it? I love the teachers. Yeah, great profession, but how do you allow that to happen? These kids learn nothing if they didn't have someone there. Yeah. I mean, that's it, and that'll scar them for life. Mm-hmm. I mean, getting a slow start. If you look at something like Storyteller, which the entire goal is to get homeless kids started in kindergarten well. And so what we just did is we closed the schools and we went online. And if you're not wealthy enough to have the right devices and have internet, yeah, sorry, you can't go to school.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, I just went through that with my kid for 2 years, and that's, we were happy she could take off the mask a couple weeks ago.
Oh, I
You
know.
know, one thing on the Christy Lozano, is there any credibility that you know anything about this lawsuit about whether she's qualified to run or not? That's been
I've
floating
heard
around
about
for a
it.
while. Mhm.
I heard about it before she ran,
Mhm.
that there might be an issue. I actually had coffee with her. She was one of my coffees,
Mhm.
and James, and she said she has the right credentials.
Okay.
And I think the question is, does she have the credentials, the right credentials, which I believe is yes. And secondly, has she worked in that area? And the answer there, I don't know. And so, what should, but by the way, do you know what she did? Did you watch her video?
I've not watched her video. No.
Okay, so here's what she did in the video, why it made national news, why she got Laura Ingram. She went into a password protected teachers only part of the Santa Barbara School District website, which was stacked with what you could term critical race theory and obvious sex education that was way beyond what it should be. And she did it online and unpacked it in front of everyone.
Okay. Yeah.
And
So everyone can see it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, well, first off, why is there a curriculum for teachers that parents aren't allowed to see?
Mhm.
Why is it password protected, deep buried in the bowels of the basement? I mean, come on. I mean, so I think she has some credibility. That took some nerve to be able to go do that.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the Democratic Party. You don't have to name names. I will. I'll lay it out there, sort of my perspective. But
Yeah.
Daraka Larimore-Hall, I have a lot of respect for him. We don't have to agree here. I think he's smart. I think he's brilliant. He's well researched. He knows his stuff, and
Yeah.
he's sharp. Probably, definitely my favorite Democrat to talk to in the party. Okay, he's great. He went off and did some stuff on the statewide, and he started to not be involved in the local party stuff as much. And so they had Gail Teton Landis, and now they have Darcel in charge. And to me, it's sort of interesting. The party, to me, does not seem as strong as it was, 10 years ago or something like that. And Daraka was criticized for kind of pushing out a lot of the old timers, who were in the party and bringing in the young activists. And it was like, oh, you guys are just trying to be kingmakers and you don't want to get along with anybody. And as you know, Daraka, he's really not interested in getting along with people he doesn't agree with politically. But then now he's gone, and now we have the second district supervisor race. Gregg's leaving. Laura Capps is running for it. They tried privately not even privately, everyone knew, to get someone to run, against Laura, because Laura was not like their favorite candidate, because of Challenge DOS for first district, and they couldn't get anyone, right? They tried to get Luz Reyes Martin to run, Galita, and she chose not to run. So now they endorsed her, and they sort of braced her, and now they're with Laura. Even though Jonathan Abood was like, oh, maybe I'll run, all these, it seems like it's pretty scattered and very different. The party, to me, feels as though it is kind of losing a little bit of the control that it had. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. What is the future of them from your perspective? Do you see them as growing in clout, growing in power, or do you see them as sort of regressing here?
Well, you gotta remember that the old saying, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. They've had absolute power, and then you get cocky, and they have good reason, because they own the numbers, and they have a great machine. So Daraka is really a bright guy. I totally agree with you, and he makes great thoughts and great decisions. He's to run a party and to run a massive ahead majority party where everyone wants to be boss. You got to be able to kick some butt and keep them in line. I mean, he has a huge challenge, and that's why I think things went really well. He picked his candidates. He made sure things happened. I think picking the candidates a little too much has been a problem, because we're not having competitive races.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about it. I mean, is that good for democracy? It's not good for the candidates. It's not good to walk into office and not have had a race.
Right.
At least one. I mean, I think Joyce Dudley had a very competitive first race, very competitive, and it was tough. It was ugly. It was bare knuckles, and she's one of my favorite people. I introduced her recently at an event as California's greatest district attorney. I mean, she is so respected around the state, but I think that defined who she was. It toughened her up. It got her to be strong, but it also got her to look at all sides of the issues. She couldn't just knee jerk to what she believed. She had to think about the whole county. And that made her a better DA. So is Laura Capps going to be a better supervisor for running without anyone else with her? I mean, I don't think it helped Gregg. I think Gregg running for state assembly, he'd have a lot better race if he had run and had name ID higher. I mean, Gregg is favorite. He's a Democrat. He's got a D. He's a good man. He has people say good things, but he hasn't run for a long, long time. So, but of course, Laura Capps has run, and when she lived in the first district, which now she lives in the second district, and she could have run for the third, but I think that's in 2 years. But I mean, Laura says she doesn't want to climb up in politics, but really, I think she does. And what a great name to run. I really credit Doss Williams running a great campaign against her 2 years ago to hold that seat and to make it happen. But
let me ask you this. That's a good point, John. Right, Doss Williams. What do you make of this anti-Doss Montecito group? Is it representative of like all of Montecito? Is it just a small group related to cannabis? You and I know Doss, right? I mean, Doss is. People say all kinds of things about Doss. Most of the time, they're wrong, right? They don't understand him. He's really, really strategic, really smart, really intelligent. His story is true. He did grow up poor and go through a lot of stuff. You don't have to agree with him or even like him, but I mean, is Doss? I mean, what's the deal with these Montecito people who are like actively like hating on him all the time?
I know it's such an odd thing, right? I mean, he won hands down. It wasn't. So they were behind Laura. They were pushing against Doss. The best night and day of Laura's campaign against Doss was in Montecito, the Montecito Journal Candidates Forum.
Yeah.
And she did really well. He was a little stunned, and the crowd was definitely on her side. But every other day belonged to Doss. I mean, the deal is Doss can just get to some people. He's not cocky, but he's got a nice confidence to him. When I meet with Doss and talk about something, and we just had the Westmont President's Breakfast, and Doss sat at my table. I wanted him to make sure he got there to see Michael Lewis. I mean, we talk. I mean, he listens. He's inquisitive. I mean, he's exactly what you want in an office holder, and he doesn't knee jerk on everything. I mean, he is, Darcel works for him. She's the party leader. So, I mean, he's definitely at the top of the game there, but he's not a guy that's going to just knee jerk in every issue. He's going to have a conversation. He'll fight with you. I mean, he's one of my favorite people to meet with and debate. I mean, he's fun. So I really, truly don't get it. And the cannabis stuff, I mean, I think the cannabis stuff was way overblown. From the beginning, my deal was let the market take care of it. I mean, let all these people go out and do the cannabis stuff when the illegal people don't stop all over the Western United States. They don't stop producing, and the legal comes on, and we're giving it out. There's not going to be that big of an increase in usage, and that's what happened. The prices dropped like a rock. The revenue's not coming, not because they're not producing, it's because the price is down. So cannabis is somewhat of a dead issue. And when the entire country legalizes cannabis and it can cross state lines, it's totally over.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to have to, I know there's been a talk, California, Santa Barbara, Sunshine, cannabis and growing cannabis is supposed to be a deal. It's like, it's a silly issue to fight about, right? By the way, carpinteria, I get it. Yeah. I get it. I mean,
The odor issues.
the
Yeah.
odor is a serious issue.
Yeah. Yeah. We were driving through there this week, and yeah, I could smell it
Yeah,
from Highway 101.
It's like who let the skunks out?
Yeah.
It's like unbelievable. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a serious issue that needs to be dealt with. But I look at the state that I moved to when I was 25 years old, 24, 25 years old, just turning 25. That we had such promise and was such a great state. Right now, California has the highest taxes in every possible way. We have the highest taxes. We have the highest poverty rate. We have the poorest schools. I mean, our schools are at the bottom third of the nation, and they're funded. We have the highest homeless problems, and what that comes out of is a one-party system where there's no one fighting, no one pushing, and you just, I mean, is that what the Democratic Party wants to be known for? We own everything. We own all the state offices. We own the Assembly and the Senate, and we have the highest taxes. We have surplus revenue, but we can't deal with the poverty level. We can't deal with the homelessness, but we can surely get more tax revenue. We can tax people more and more and more. I mean, it's not a good record, and scary. Including, you look around Santa Barbara, we have some of the same issues. We have the highest poverty rate in the state, and a state that has the highest poverty rate in the nation. Look at our public schools. We have a lot of dedicated teachers, and our schools are not performing. I mean, we invested when we didn't have money to send our kids to private schools, from preschool to all the way through high school. I mean, and every time we thought about at a certain level pulling them out at the end of grade school, the data would come out. It's like, nope, I don't want to ruin my kids' chances on a good start. How do we get them to start with great education, learning how to be critical thinkers, and learning how to be a rebel without being a troublemaker?
Yeah, that's totally true. Not everyone can afford
No.
independent school, but I will say that what you can afford is active parental engagement, whatever your parental situation looks like.
Got
it. You don't. I just have never felt like you can expect the schools to be educator and parent. You've got to do your role, and if your kid is in a school that's not great, well, it's up to you as parents or guardians or whoever's in that household to take responsibility for supplementing that and putting in the extra.
Absolutely. But I mean, Josh, you're equivalently working 3 jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, so on the side, you're also going to be, you got to be an advocate for your kids. But I mean, how does, and you work intellectual jobs that no one's checking you in and checking you out, other than teaching, you got to show up on time. Yeah. But you have the opportunity to go to the schools and ask questions and deal with. There's a lot of people that can't. I mean, just a lockdown. Did anyone think about all these families that don't have internet connection, don't have enough computers? I mean, with Steve Ainsley, when he was the publisher of the News Press, we started Computers for Families and really kicked it up. And I mean, what would happen if that wasn't around? If they hadn't gotten into a lot of the homes.
Hey, John, I want to talk a little bit about you. I've always known you as sort of this wise man who was knowledgeable about things, and if he got something wrong, he definitely was going to let you know. And even a couple of years ago, pushing back on articles and angles and slants, from your perspective. And I've always known you as sort of this very smart, strong, formidable individual who is in charge of everything you do really well. Take me back to young John Davies and, how did you get your start? How did you find this sort of situation that you're in professionally and personally?
Everyone's story is sort of funny. I believe I ended up being an entrepreneur because no one would hire me, but probably for that very reason, Josh. It's like, I want that jerk working for me. So I grew up in upstate New York. Sort of a struggling lower middle class family in a really nice suburban town. So I had the advantage of a great education, and then thinking of going off to college, I got with my parents, and I'm one of six, and I'm the second to last, and the others, both of my parents were married, had two kids, brought them together, and had me and then my brother. So the others, I didn't understand how they went to college. It wasn't like what we talked about, and a couple of them didn't. And so I'd go to my parents and say, the college thing. I mean, how much do we have? Do you have money? Where can we go? What can we afford? I got admitted to some colleges that were private colleges with big price tags, and they're like, we have no money for your college. We have no way of helping you get into college, and so good luck. And I'm like, okay, well, I got into these colleges. I got into State University in New York, at this little college in West New York called Fredonia, and I never went there. I was recruited for track, and I'm like, I guess I'll go there. And I mean, it was like such a gift. Absolutely incredibly beautiful campus right off Lake Erie, outside of Buffalo. So it's west of Buffalo, between Buffalo and Erie, Pennsylvania. And first, I had a great political science department, which is what my interest was. I was going to be an international lawyer. I was going to deal with international law. That was my dream. Thankfully, that didn't happen. And I had a great track coach who was department chair, who just took me under his wing. And a quick story. This is an amazing man. So I come to him. I had one of the colleges that was trying to recruit me for wrestling and gave me a little scholarship, come back and give me a huge scholarship. They say, come back, we can do it. We need your weight class. Come now, be here for the second semester, and you can wrestle next year. We really need you. And I took the letter. I mean, those days, you got a letter, what to my parents that came to me, so, yes, weeks upon weeks. You think about how crazy that is. And so I took it in with a coach who was going to be my track coach, a wise man, sat in his office. He spent 3 hours with me, talked about pros and cons, and we really got to know one another. He, at the end, he said, you know what? As much as I want you to be here, I think you should take it. It's a better education.
Wow.
I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, he goes, so you all set to go to such and such? And I said, no, I'm going to stay here. And he said, why? I said, for the first time in my life, I met someone that I would love to be my mentor, who cares more about me than their interest. And I think that's so valuable that I want to spend a bunch of years with a person like that. And he became a really close friend. I ran the intramural sports starting the next year as an assistant. And then my junior, senior, and graduate school years, I ran intramural sports. I was the assistant coach with him on the track team after I graduated. So really special man. So that was a game changer. And we had a great political science department. I went to Washington the Washington semester. I worked with the Quakers, the Law of the Sea, doing the Law of the Sea Treaty. And I clearly understood I didn't want to be in Washington. So I came out to Santa Barbara to visit my sister. And I got here, first time in California, and my brother-in-law picked me up at LAX, and we're driving up the coast, and I'm like, I had two jobs I was in the Hopper finalist for. One was track coach at Syracuse, track and cross country coach, and sports information director. And the other was a spinoff of a group to become a common cause on international issues, which is sort of like the Law of the Sea Treaty. And I'm like, I really don't want to go to DC. I don't want to go to Syracuse. And when I'm driving up the coast, I'm like, yeah, I'm taking my name out of those. And so I settled here and started doing odd jobs, bartended, got a strange job running a group called the Santa Barbara Sailing Academy. And as I was doing that, working out of the guy's studio apartment, that was fun. I made his bed every day and did his dishes to start my day at work, because I couldn't stand to be in the dirty room. And then I met the guys at what was then the Santa Barbara College of Law at the News Press, dropping off some ads. And I ended up going to work for them. I answered phones between 5 a.m. and 10 a.m. because they were a night school and we're advertising in the East Coast. And I ended up doing a whole recruitment, brought back a class of 30 or 40, from the East Coast. And I did that, went down to the dean and founder of the school was a bar review lecturer. And so I ended up working with the bar review in LA and rose up quickly, fired the guy that oversaw me, and then decided I'm going back to Santa Barbara and start my own thing. And that's how I got started. I did little projects. I tripped and fell. I mean, you know how it is. Joshua, you want, let's get a job teaching. That would be fun. I'd love to teach. And, I want to do this. So and then it just slowly built, and the better people I brought with me, the harder I figured out how to work better and harder. And we grew. And
yeah, that resiliency, being scrappy, figuring out a way, a path, listening to your instinct, learning from your mistakes, all of that is super important. Where did you bartend though? I'm trying to imagine John Davies as a bartender.
Oh my gosh. So I bartended for private parties, and I had to stop because when I came back from working the bar review, the Harcourt Brace BAR Barbary, and I did private parties, and so it was great money, because you got paid a fee and then tips. And but I started running into my clients at the parties, and I got a little red jacket on, but it was really fun because I have the ability to memorize things. So cocktail party of 30, 40 people, after the first round of drinks, I could go out and get everyone hand them their second drink without being asked. That's magic for a tip, by the way. Yeah. When your guests are telling you your bartender's amazing, you remembered my drink. But it was great. And I did the Miramar like a couple nights as a fill-in, but I didn't get out into the big bars.
We got a couple more minutes here. I want to ask you about your faith. You're a man of faith. You're a Christian, and can you just talk to me about how that came to be? Were you raised in a Christian household, or did you just come to it on your own? And how does that navigate what you do? And you are in PR. You sometimes have to get harsh. Sometimes you have to get mean. You have to tell company stories when you're doing campaigns. That's fierce. Can you talk to me a little about sort of that, how you reconcile all that too?
Sure. That's a really good question, a tough question. So I didn't grow up in a family of great faith. I grew up in a Catholic family my mom went to church. We all went to church with her. There's a point in my life that I thought I would be a priest. And which is really interesting, because the reason I didn't is I didn't think I could. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have a family. And when I turned 40 and wasn't married, I started thinking maybe I should have been the priest.
I could have done it.
I could have done it at least at 40. But so I became a Christian in between my junior and senior year of high school, and at a Fellowship of Christian Athletes camp at Holy Cross, and it was the moment where God became real to me. And it was a personal relationship, and that was a game changer for me from what I was doing as a Catholic, which was great. And I went to church in the morning. I was there with 30 old ladies and John. I'd go to church as a kid in the morning, but having a personal relationship with God was really good and great. And of course, I sidestepped and sort of backtracked and went away through my college years. And flirted back and forth with it over the years. And when Nina and I got married, it was almost like we were both in the same place, that we wanted to find our faith again, and starting a family, and that's what we did. And so right now it's just who I am and what I do. And so when I have to do something, first off, I don't think Jesus was a softball player. I mean, he's Jesus is pretty tough. Read the Bible. The red words in the Bible aren't always sweet words. They're strong rebuffs, and they're it's like just the woman bringing the woman to Jesus and saying, accuse her, she needs to be struck dead and stoned to death. And Jesus standing there and said, "Those among you who without sin throw the first stone." And I really believe in that, but I don't think I have conflicts very often. And when I do, it keeps me up at night. I have to deal with it. And when it does, I hope that I make the right decision. I believe that I do. Santa Barbara has a very rich Christian community. We have some amazing churches. We have some amazing Christian leaders, and a lot of amazing things happening here. And that's probably one of the things why what happened to Rob Dayton and the attempt at Barrett was so frustrating to me. It's like there's no reason. The call, the Believer's Edge, whose number one deal was to help men, be better men, to be better husbands, to love their wives, to love their kids, spend time, to think about how they behave and what they do, to break addictions. And then their program was to go to the jail and help people in jail do the same. So it was sort of sad. And I look at the people at the city that led that, some on the council, some from the staff, and it's a really bad, dark day for our city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, John Davies, I really appreciate your time today. I learned a lot, and it's just always a pleasure. And I want to sort of just, acknowledge you for all your great work you've done in the community over the years. And, anyone watching who agrees, doesn't agree, is a Christian, not a Christian, Republican, Democrat, doesn't really matter. What matters is that, if you're in a room with John Davies, and I know this, you're going to be kind, you're going to be respectful, you're going to be thoughtful, and you're probably going to try to give some advice that's going to help improve that person's life. And I think that's really what we should be looking at with people, whether we choose to live the same life they would live or not. That doesn't really matter. What matters is this person going to respect you. And my experience has always been that way, even when you're roasting me. I remember that day, John Davies, when you roasting me at the police and fire fundraiser. You probably forgot about that.
Oh, no, it was like, so I know we're going to go long, but that was truly one of the greatest moments in history of that event. Is like, it was a roast,
right?
And Dan Secord just set you up perfectly. He gave you asked him a question, and he's like, well, I don't know. I don't think the roast should really go to that. I like it to go to this. I don't really like the police and fire. It's like,
right.
I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to have so much fun. That was a great event, and there was some people involved in the nonprofit that we did the money through. So it was to those watching this, it was an event to raise money for scholarships for the families of police and fire through the Scholarship Foundation. And there's someone that was involved in the Scholarship Foundation, didn't like a Christian man having a role too much. And I was the president of their board for 2 years, and vice president for 4 years. But they didn't like it, and they thought that the event was too political, and it was so far from political. It was what it used to be here, Josh, right? Yeah. You were there. We got together, everyone's there, and we laughed at one another. And we roasted mostly Democrats, and honored them. And Gregg, E.F. Falcone, we did Dan Secord. That was really fun because you made the event fun. Yeah.
I wrote a story about the drama behind the roast. It's such a Josh Molina story to do.
What are you doing? It was such a dumb story. but without Dan Secord jumping into it with both feet, it wouldn't have been anything. But he just jumped in and gave it to you. So I called him that day when it came out in the morning, and Dan goes, "What do I do?" I said, you need to go right now. You need to get on your hands and knees and walk to Mike McGrew's office, and you need to walk to Pat McElroy's office and ask them for forgiveness. And you need to do it from your house in the Mesa all the way downtown on your knees, and they need to be bloody and torn. And he just started laughing. He goes, "I'll get in the car and go see them right now." I said, "That'd be good." And that was the morning of the event. I really appreciate it. And do you remember what I said as I opened it up?
I mean, you had 5 or 6 jokes directly at me in that event. Yeah. No, I don't remember. What'd you say?
But I opened up and looked around the room, and I said, "There's nothing like a little bit of foot and mouth disease by the person we're honoring today to get this kicked off to be a great event." And I go, "I see Josh Molina's here." And then I just went at you. Yeah. It was a great night. We raised $50,000-$60,000 like 5 times, and it was a very, very fun event.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks a lot, John Davies, for your time. Good luck with
everything. Do it again. Let's do it again.
Definitely.
Maybe Daraka and I could come on and do an event together.
Well, I could moderate between you two. That'd be great.
I think it'd be fun.
Right.
It would be very fun.
All right. Thanks, John. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.